Hey everyone, it's Monday, July 21st. You're watching CBC News BC. I'm Benit Brach. We're here in the Vancouver newsroom, and here's what's happening this afternoon. A severe thunderstorm watch has been posted for the Okanagan boundary and South Thompson regions. So Environment Canada says the conditions could bring powerful wind gusts, large hail, and heavy rain. The Weather Office suggests people head indoors when they hear the thunder, saying lightning kills and injures Canadians every year. The thunderstorm watch is also in place for the Coquihalla Highway and the Okanagan Connector, where they say the conditions could get hazardous. Environment Canada has also issued a heat warning for the inland regions of BC's north coast. It says daytime temperatures are expected to be near 30 degrees Celsius, with overnight lows in the mid-teens. Those temperatures are expected to last until Tuesday night, and it says health risks are higher for seniors, people who live alone, and those with pre-existing medical conditions, and that it's important to check in. And police say a 28-year-old man is in custody after a stabbing in Kitsilano early Sunday morning. Vancouver police say just before 3 a.m., a 22-year-old man was stabbed on a bus near the Burrard Bridge. The victim was taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries. A suspect was arrested near Burrard and Cornwall Avenue and is now facing multiple charges, including aggravated assault and assault with a weapon. Vancouver Park Board staff are seeking approval to proceed with the next phase of a tree removal project in Stanley Park. So the Park Board says already thousands of trees have been cut because of a looper moth infestation. It says the dead and drying trees are creating fire and public safety risks.
So far, we have taken down just over 10,000 of them, but that was only in the highest priority areas of the park. So, for example, the Causeway, which has 50,000 cars a day going through it, we had to take the trees down there, and around Stanley Park Drive, where a lot of activity. But we still have 42% of the park left that still has a lot of dead trees standing there.
The Park Board's latest report shows that just over 11,000 trees have been cut down to deal with that infestation, and it was first reported in 2020. The tree removal plan has faced sharp criticism over the years. Some residents even filed a lawsuit that ultimately didn't stop the tree cutting. And after almost a year and a half of negotiations, Canada Post workers will begin voting today on what its employer is calling its final offer. But the union of about 55,000 postal workers is urging them to reject that proposal.
We did a survey of our own members to find out what are the things that they care about the most. And, wages was not in the top three. Really, our concern is about this new classification of part-time workers and weekend workers, and it's precarious work, and the offer for extensions or work opportunities will bypass those that are currently permanent workers.
And the vote comes after Canada's employment minister asked the Canadian Industrial Relations Board to intervene. That offer includes wage increases of around 13% over 4 years, pension protections, and weekend parcel delivery positions. That voting is going to take place from July 21st to August 1st. And you are updated this afternoon. I'm Benit Brach. Stay with us. BC Today is coming up next.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. A string of cases involving intimate partner violence is upping the pressure on the province to do more amid calls to treat it as a public safety emergency. Acting Attorney General Mike Farnworth will join me at 12:45. And first up, it is week 2 of the search for BC's best symbol. Have you voted yet? Justin McElroy will be here to give us all the latest stats. And since today's voting is in the animals category, you have the grizzly versus the spirit bear, orca versus the sea otter. We're asking you, what is BC's most iconic animal? I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. We are in week 2 in our search for BC's best symbol, and that makes this week the quarterfinals. Well, today's category is animals, and we all have a deep connection with these animals, right? So the matchups today, orca versus sea otter, Steller's jay versus the marmot, the spirit bear versus the grizzly bear, and the sockeye versus the Chinook salmon. Okay, well, this means last week's voting meant we said goodbye to the black and brown bear, the coho and the pink salmon, the Sasquatch and the bald eagle, the cougar and the raven. Sorry, raven, nevermore, sadly. Okay, do you agree with the bracket results so far? What do you think is BC's most iconic creature? Call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca, or if you're watching us on TikTok, just leave your comment there. CBC's Justin McElroy is, of course, at the helm of the best symbol bracket. He joins me now with some friends.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Justin. Okay, why don't we get it over with? Show us your, tell us about, do they have names?
Well, I don't think so.
No. Okay.
One of them is not mine, but sometimes you got to get a good prop. And I'm holding Steller's jay, BC's official bird.
Yes.
And I'm not sure it actually technically is a marmot, but it sort of looks like one.
It looks like, that's what I thought when I saw it.
And these two are going up against each other in the quarterfinals of the animal bracket. We have 32 more entries, so we have a lot more to go through for the entire thing. But today is animals. 8 are left. We'll have only 4 at the end of today. And this is just one of the 4 matchups that people can vote on to decide which advances to the next round of the search for BC's best symbol.
I'm just happy you didn't bring in a grizzly and a spirit bear.
I mean, that's would be too ferocious.
That's a little much, and a lot of studio space. What have you learned so far from one weekend?
Oh, well, we learned that people like to click on online polls saying what thing is better than another. More than 250,000 votes in the first round of this competition. And, the things that we thought were going to be favorites so far are all of the top seeds advanced in the first round through this. So whether it was the spirit bear, whether it was a totem, whether it was an orca, whether it was the BC flag, the red cedar, those things which we identify so strongly with have gone through round 1. We'll see about the future ones. But it's interesting to see so much, sort of provincial patriotism and nationalism, and people really thinking about the things that they identify with that makes British Columbia, British Columbia.
Now, you said 32 more to go in terms of choices, but I know you spent weeks even whittling it down. What was that process like for you, and how did you come to the final choices?
It was fun because we asked people on social media on a variety of platforms, what do you think is BC's best symbol? And kept it as open-ended as that. And we got more than 300 submissions from different people around the province, many of which, because it's social media, people upvote or like for each of them. So you see so many interesting things, really cool parts of the province, sometimes funny, sometimes, maybe a little bit more sarcastic than sincere. But you look at all of them and you go, okay, well, which ones do people really like? Obviously, there were a lot of people saying, the orca, right? Or different types of salmon. But, some people say the Okanagan wine. And so we say, sure, absolutely. That's a part of this province, right? And you go 64 because that's how a traditional bracket works. And we need to do very official things with this. And you go, okay, well, what are 4 sort of sections that people can vote on? And you look look, there were a lot of animals that people talked about. There were a lot of nature, but there was also the difference between the coast and the rest of the province. And that's something that we see play out geographically, politically a lot, and same with a lot of symbols that people brought forward, where some of them were the entire province or particular bits in the north or the Okanagan. And some things people would say, this represents all of BC. And it's like, well, if you're next to the Pacific Ocean, then sure, but maybe not the rest. And so it's going to be interesting to see the further we get along, which of these symbols that are maybe a little bit just more geographically specific advance, and which ones people go, you know what, this is a great symbol, but it is a symbol of BC. I'm not quite sure.
BC Ferries coming to mind. Let's take some calls now. Justin McElroy is with me, updating us on the search for BC's best symbol. Bracket continues. We're in week 2, and today the quadrant that you're voting on is the animals quadrant. And so we are asking you, what do you think? Because we know British Columbians care about the creatures in our province. What do you think is BC's most iconic creature? You can call us now, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. And you can also just hit pound 690 on your phone. Our email, bctoday@cbc.ca. And on TikTok, you can just post your comment there too. Thanks for joining us there. Mike is on the line now in Smithers. Hi, Mike. Welcome to the show.
Yes, hello. How are you?
I'm just fine. And what are your thoughts on the choices today?
Oh, I like them. It was tough between the grizzly bear and sockeye salmon, but yeah, I'm going to go with the fish because I live on the Bulkley River here on Smithers, and they're close to our hearts. Well, mostly the steelhead, but they're not on the list, so I'll go with the sockeye.
Yeah, so sockeye versus Chinook today, right?
Yeah, and sockeye is currently winning 66 to 34%.
Not really surprising. But, to you, Mike, you talk about the salmon starting, the run is different, is the steelhead. But why do you think you have such an affinity for the salmon as a representative of BC?
Well, they feed us indigenously. They're close to the land. Watching them run up the river, it's a beautiful thing. It's a glorious creature, and it provides a lot of wealth to BC in many ways.
Yeah, really well put, Mike. Thanks so much for the call from Smithers. It is emotional, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's this connection that people have with things that go back for themselves decades, and for this province, generations and even century. And salmon, certainly, it's funny, some people might say, well, why do you have all these different ones in? Well, because there are different types of Pacific salmon that people have different affinity with. It looks like sockeye will be the one that people choose as the best salmon, which may, as you said, may not be a surprise, but it's funny to see these votes happen and see just how much and why people choose it.
It's funny, too, because last week we had that email that said, don't forget about the other salmon species. And people are really digging into the science of it all. We're loving the nerding out part of it. Is that something you've come across?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, someone on the street the other day sort of shouted at me that his partner was upset that the Raven was going up against the Orca in the first round, because it's like, I love the Raven, but it's going to lose. And so it's an opportunity for people with very specific affinity for specific animals or pieces of nature. Tomorrow we have the Battle of the Trees, the final there, Douglas fir versus the red cedar. We have someone in the newsroom who came up to me and said, the red cedar is totally overrated, Douglas fir. And there are people around British Columbia.
A take I never thought I would hear.
Yes, and yet people have these opinions, and this is a fantastic way to get to have some fun with it.
Absolutely. TikTok, our TikTok viewers are weighing in too. Voice Check writes, it would make sense for the symbol for BC to be something that is uniquely found in BC, and that is crows. Is that the case?
Well, no, the yes and no.
Oh.
Crows, of course, are seen all around North America. There is a particular breed of the corvid that is particular to the Pacific Northwest. At the end of the day, during the submission process, people did not bring crows forward, and so it didn't hit towards that. But they can't all make it in.
Yeah, no, we're going to miss some for sure. We actually want to hear from you if you feel that we've missed something and you want to put it just out there for the discussion, for our casual discussion here on BC Today. You can let us know too. And John Spooner pointed out the only right answer is bear, because literally BC stands for bear country.
We will see.
Touche, John. Again, it's 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Our email is bctoday@cbc.ca. And Shauna writes us from Penanton Lake, the animal whose habitat is located only in BC is the spirit bear. No other place in the world that I know of, or nowhere else in the world, I think is what you meant there. Thank you very much, Shauna. And she writes, this should be the only choice. Yeah, I mean, it's a rare sighting.
It's a rare sighting. It's due to a genetic recessive mutation that only happens in the central coast of BC, which is why there are so few of them, because you're starting with a very limited geographical area. About 400 or so left is the estimates of them out there. And certainly that white bear on a green rainforest backdrop, it makes your breath go away.
It really does. And I remember when there was a very concerted effort to have them protected. And, you know, of course, now we have that designation. The Kermode bear. Thank you very much for that. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Why don't we go through some of the other choices for today?
Yeah, and I'll just give people a little bit of the updated results. Voting open until 10 p.m., but, you know, early voting, as we know in elections, usually signifies which way things are going to go, but you can have a surge of late votes that change what happens. So right now, as we said, Sockeye up 66 to 34% over the Chinook. In the Battle of the Bears, Spirit Bear is beating Grizzly Bear 67% to 33%.
Wow.
Orca is defeating, just clobbering the Sea Otter, taking a big bite, 87 to 13%.
I see what you did there.
And in these two, in the Stellar Jay and the Marmot, the Stellar Jay is swooping from the sky and crashing down the Marmot, 58 to 42%. Still early. But that would be, if we say our final four animals are the Stellar's Jay, the Spirit Bear, the Orca, and the Sockeye Salmon, that's going to be tough next week.
That really is. Then you get to how do you want me to choose, Justin? Why are you doing this to all of us? That was the first thing my father-in-law said to me yesterday, by the way, as he got in our cars. We picked him up. So which one is it going to be?
We'd love to cause pain in brackets.
And stir up family dynamics. So thanks for that. Randy writes, the crane, BC's most popular animal. I see them on every corner, lifting construction materials onto condo towers.
You got
very cheeky there, Randy.
Well, we did put the condo in there, but it got crushed by the totem pole 96 to 4%, because cranes are symbols, condos are symbols. Are they symbols that we have an affinity with and feel positive about? Maybe, maybe not.
Very fraught relationship with those cranes and with condos. Randy, thanks for that. BC Today at cbc.ca, asking you what you think is BC's most iconic creature. I feel that this is the one, the creature, I know you have different categories, but this is one where everybody has an opinion.
It is, and it is the section of this competition where we got the most votes.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of people in each, but the animals just, there's something where there's more of an emotional connection there than maybe nature or the things that were created by the humans. And again, a reminder of, why do symbols create power for us? Why do they have an impact? And so often is because they're living creatures and we can see them and they have their own personalities, and we transport ours onto them as well. And we transport our sense of what it means to be a British Columbian onto them at the same time.
A few years ago, a listener sent me a photo they took of a Stellar's Jay, which is it's actually my favorite bird. And so I have it in my living room. It looks a little more realistic than that. Sarah Jean is on the line now in Victoria. Hi, Sarah Jean. Thanks for calling in. What do you think is the iconic creature in BC?
Well, I think the iconic creature should be the cougar. And the reason is because I feel like us humans are an invasive species of all the other animals' habitats, especially cougars. And people are reporting, oh my God, there's a cougar uptown, or there's a cougar here and there. And police are not trained to tranquilize and relocate. And relocation They don't do well, I've heard, when they're relocated. So if we could have an iconic animal of BC that also and motivates us to preserve the habitat for that animal and have more respect for that animal, I think we're giving more than just our emotional feelings and power. We're also giving power to nature and power to that animal. So I think if we could think a little bit wider than just what do we feel is so great, but how could we help with this vote? How could we help an animal that's losing its habitat?
Oh, you've made so many wonderful points there, Sarah Jean. And just to let you know, in about 10 minutes, we will be joined by a conservationist and wildlife educator, Connel Bradwell, who is from the island. And so we're going to touch on that with him for sure. But what you say there about humans encroaching on habitat and cougars being part of that habitat, and you know, anytime I hear about a cougar sighting on the island, for sure, you think about what's going to happen. But yeah.
But it's interesting because, you know, I have to correct Sarah Jean a little bit in the fact that cougars were in the bracket, but
Yes, they were.
It lost
That's
in the
right.
first round to the sea otter. And the sea otter is a different example of that dynamic playing out because they were essentially extinct from the BC coast for a long time until they were reimported in. And there was a real, you know, serious effort over many decades to reestablish their population. And, you know, maybe people enjoy sort of the smallness and mischievousness of the sea otter a little bit more than a cougar, which can seem like a threat sometimes. Who knows why people voted the way they did, but our relationship with different animals is different for different reasons.
Yeah.
And that's part of the fascinating conversation that we get to have here.
And absolutely, I think that conservation point that you make, Sarah Jean, is a really good one, and one we'll talk about with our next guest too. Speaking of relationships with animals, Travis, again, I think a little cheeky here, but is writing, iconic animal, the lapdog, i.e. the pug or the Pomeranian. Many sightings of those, for sure, depending on where you are.
Yes, especially if you're in a Vancouver condo where you don't necessarily have room for a big
With
one.
cranes all around
Yes.
you. Yes, you're right. Anytime we have our dog columnist on the show, we hear a lot about those pugs, those very cute pugs. And yes, you see them everywhere. If not on a lap, in a stroller.
Yes.
James writes, the way the mountain caribou survives in our big mountains with huge snowpacks is completely unbelievable. I've had the pleasure of viewing them, and they certainly need some habitat protection. Yeah, wonderful point. Thank you very much.
We could have done 64 things just on animals and still had a really interesting vote.
Absolutely. And let's go to our callers now. Pardon me, I'm trying to catch up here with all our comments. Again, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. We'll wrap up with Justin here, and then we'll get Connel Bradwell on the line as well. But some more comments on TikTok. Kirsten writes, how about the Bigfoot? Which the Sasquatch was in there.
Lost to the marmot.
Lost to the marmot. Wojciech writes, again, my point is that ravens are part of the options, which do not need to be specifically unique to BC. And Tanis 1692 writes, spirit bear, all the way. Okay, there's the spirit. Thank you very much for that. Justin, you've got us off to a good start here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, good luck. So tomorrow is what?
Tomorrow is nature, Wednesday is coastal, and Thursday is provincial. And by the end of this week, we will have just 16 symbols of British Columbia left to vote between.
Oh my God, I'm on the edge of my seat. Thank you so much for this.
Thanks.
That is CBC reporter and, of course, our bracket master here at CBC, Justin McElroy. It's 12:24. We'll continue to take your calls on iconic creatures in BC in a moment. But first, it is summertime in BC, and that means the return of the Vancouver Folk Fest. Now, we caught up with Fiona Black, who's the festival's artistic director.
Folk has broadened in its scope of what people consider folk, and there's a lot of world music here, African music. There's indie folk, indie rock. Like there's blues. There's diehard what people think of as folk artists, like the singer-songwriter thing. As the artistic director, I'm of course really proud of the 44 acts that we've programmed here. We have a ton of international acts. We have a lot of local acts, Canadian acts. It's a dream lineup for me. I love every band, and I think there's such a variety that there's a band for everybody, and there's a lot of bands that are making their Vancouver debut, so come on down and discover your next favorite band. This is a rite of passage for people who live here. If you have friends that don't know about it, what's up with that? Tell them.
12:26 now, and you're with BC Today, and the search for BC's best symbol continues with today's category, which is animals. And we have these matchups now for today between the orca versus the sea otter, the Steller's jay versus the marmot, and the spirit bear versus the grizzly bear, and the sockeye salmon versus the Chinook salmon. Well, what do you think is BC's most iconic creature? I'm also really interested in the comment that we heard about, what can we learn from this? And what does it say about the need for conservation if we care so much about these animals? So let us know if you have a thought about that too. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone or email bctoday@cbc.ca. Comment on TikTok if you like. And my guest now is Connel Bradwell, who's a wildlife educator and a Leo Award-winning conservationist. Hello, Connel.
Hello, Michelle.
Nice to talk to you again. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Are you following this contest of ours?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love this kind of thing. I heard Justin say that it was people who love voting on online contests, and I am one of those. So yes, I've been following along, and I've particularly been interested in the animal and nature sections, of course, because that's what, to me, that is the best part of British Columbia, and it has to be our symbol. It has to be an animal or something to do with nature.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you were to pick one creature that symbolizes BC, what would it be?
Yeah, I knew you were going to do this to me. I think it's going to be for me, it's the orca. I really struggled with the orca raven pairing straight off. I wasn't prepared for that. I thought that would be the final. But they're just I just think they're so iconic. I think they have a lot of symbolism. They are so community driven. They're amazing animals. All of these animals are amazing animals, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the orca is the overall winner. But I'm not going to be disappointed with any of them. There's nothing on that list that I dislike.
Yes, you don't have it out for any of these creatures, and it is apparently doing very well against the sea otter right now. And I'd love to get into what we need to know about each of these creatures with you, Connel. I just want to ask you about that point that one of our callers made. We also have an email from Terry in Enderby who writes, I don't really care about the bracket thing, but I have a Chinook story that might interest you. 15 years ago, my brother and I went canoeing on the shoe swap during spawning season, and I can remember returns were exceeding expectations. That was the last time I can recall. And the prime spawning ground was thick with brilliant red sockeye, spaced just a few meters apart. And every minute or so, one of these fish, as big as your leg, would erupt from the river and completely clear the water. The only explanation we could think of was joy having reached life's goal and a chance to help start the next generation. Maybe British Columbians could learn from that. What a beautiful story. But that idea of, okay, here we're talking about why we care, why we're passionate about these creatures. What does it say about perhaps that need for, ensuring their sustainability?
Yeah, I think that having this kind of conversation is always so great because it makes us recognize what we have. We are looking at a list of a lot of species, and still people are saying, oh, have you thought about this one? What about this one? What about this one? BC is the most biodiverse province in Canada. We are so lucky to have such an abundance of nature and space and species. And I think that having this conversation shows us just that, to be so thankful and grateful for the wildlife we have here, and for us to think about what we could lose, because a number of these species on this list, and some of the ones that have been suggested, are decreasing. They are endangered. We are losing their habitat and their populations. And so I think in having this conversation, I just hope that it's making us recognize what we have here in BC and what there is to kind of fight for, because we just are so lucky to have so much wildlife.
Yeah, so much that we have this bracket for sure. Connel Bradwell is with me, wildlife educator and conservationist. He'll be back with us just after the CBC News Update. You are with BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks for joining us. And we'll continue our conversation looking today at asking you about BC's most iconic creature. That is what we're voting on in the search for BC's best symbol today. So love to hear from you. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or just hit pound 690, or email bctoday@cbc.ca, and we're live on TikTok as well. More of your calls, and at 12:45, the acting Attorney General for today, Mike Farnworth, will join us about the issue of intimate partner violence. That is all coming up after the CBC News Update, and here's Rob Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. A new study shows the presence of second-hand fentanyl smoke is so severe at some BC supportive housing facilities that workers can't escape substantial exposure. Tests were conducted at 14 sites. The assessments conducted for BC Housing found elevated levels of airborne fentanyl, even in the main office of all buildings tested here in Vancouver. Vancouver police say a 22-year-old man has been taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries after a stabbing on a bus near the Burrard Bridge early yesterday. A 28-year-old man has been arrested and charged with assault. There's no word on a possible motive. And post office employees represented by the Canadian Union of Postal Workers begin voting today on what the Crown Corporation has called its final offer. Canada Post says the proposal includes a wage increase of almost 14% over 4 years and a signing bonus, but the union is urging its members to reject it. And now the forecast. A severe thunderstorm watch has been posted for the Okanagan, Boundary, and South Thompson on the north coast, clearing this afternoon with a high of 18. Highs up to 17 with a few showers in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, a high of 17 with showers and a risk of thunderstorms. Highs from 19 to 23 with showers in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, a chance of showers and thunderstorms with a high of 26. And increasing cloudiness this afternoon in the Fraser Valley, a mix of sun and cloud in Metro Vancouver and Greater Victoria, with highs in the low 20s. That's your CBC News Update from Vancouver.
Thank you so much, Rob. That's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. You're with BC Today here on CBC. Around the province, you can hear us on the radio, watch us on CBC television, and we're live on YouTube as well as TikTok. Well, yes, the search continues for BC's best symbol, and today's category is animals. And today we have matchups between the orca and the sea otter, the Steller's jay and the marmot, the spirit bear and the grizzly bear, and the sockeye salmon versus the Chinook salmon. We want to know from you, what do you think is BC's most iconic creature? You call us now, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone as well. Email is bctoday@cbc.ca, and you can leave a comment on TikTok. And my guest is Connel Bradwell, a wildlife educator and conservationist. And so, there's so many things we can talk about with each of these creatures, Connel, but what stands out for you? What's something you want to make sure everybody knows, and it's just a fact that people should be aware of?
Well, one of the interesting things when we talk about conservation is that a number of these species on the list were once extinct or very close to extinction in BC. So the sea otter, for example, marmots, I'm here on the island. I think about the Vancouver Island marmot, which is an endemic species only found here. And then also the spirit bears too. And so there are a number of these species that have actually been brought back from extinction or from the brink of extinction. So that is an exciting thing. Yeah, we talked about, well, what could we lose? But it's also really exciting to see that animals can come back, that this wildlife is sort of not past the point of not all hope is lost. We can bring things back and they can thrive here in BC. Sea otters particularly are doing amazingly well now here on the coast. And yeah, I think about, looking at the spirit bear, a huge portion of their habitat is now protected with massive sort of work from the indigenous nations up there. So they're really sort of, I don't know, the future seems really bright for a lot of these species, I hope, and they seem to be going in the right direction. So I was up actually hiking in the mountains of Vancouver Island this past weekend. We didn't see any Vancouver Island marmots, but I was looking for them, and just to know that they are there and they're back and around is just it's so exciting. So we did see Steller's jay though, so that one is an interesting category for me because I love those marmots, but I am a bird nerd, so I think
you are.
Steller's jay. I think that is always going to be the one that I would choose. But yeah, the Vancouver Island marmot or marmots are hard to vote against.
Let's take a call before I ask you our next question here. Ian is on the line now in Victoria. Hi, Ian.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah.
Look, I'll first off by saying that I know it's not part of the matchup and not likely to be in the running, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to give a shout out to the giant Pacific octopus.
Okay, tell us about it and why are you passionate about it?
Well, they're the largest species of octopus in the world. You can only really encounter them if you go snorkeling or scuba diving, but they're all over the coast. They're beautiful animals. The way they shimmer, change different colors, and they can be very, very friendly. When you encounter them, it's you can compare it to walking through a neighborhood and encountering a neighborhood cat. Sometimes, most of the time, they just scatter off. But if you're friendly, they can come over and actually play with you. They're highly intelligent. They're absolutely amazing creatures. But I grant you, very few people encounter them. And I know they're not in the running. I just wanted to take the opportunity to give the octopus a shout out.
It is very worthwhile, Ian. And you've had your encounters with the giant Pacific octopus, have you?
Oh, yeah. I used to be a commercial sea urchin diver. Saw them all the time. Yeah, they're very intelligent. You'll never have a one-on-one encounter with an intelligence more alien than an octopus. They're a magical encounter. But I know not everybody in BC is going to encounter them, but like I said, I just wanted to give them a shout out.
Yeah, Ian, thank you very much. I really appreciate that and your description of what it's like to see a giant Pacific octopus in the waters. Yes, Connell, what more can you tell us about them?
Oh, that is my dream. I have not yet seen a Pacific octopus that has been alive. I've seen them washed up or been eaten by something or other, but I've never actually come face to face with one other than sort of in an aquarium. So I am desperate to see one, and they are such an amazing sort of creature. And I think that I love the highlight of the intelligence, and I've never really thought about them as like the neighborhood cat down there. I think that's really fun. I'm always checking in tide pools and stuff for them, but I haven't found them yet, but one day.
What a great contribution to the conversation, Ian. Thank you very much. And Connell, earlier we heard from a caller from Victoria who talked about cougars, which was in the running and was beat out last week. But she talked about humans encroaching on their habitat. And so I'm wondering, in many of these creatures, the role of habitat and habitat protection. You talked about the spirit bear. And so can you just describe a little bit more the role that habitat protection can play in our celebration of these creatures?
I think it's really important to think about habitat protection, not just in terms of the odd little patch here and a little patch there and these sort of little dotted wildlife preserves, but think about it as a fluid sort of system. We need corridors. Habitat in BC spans the entire province, and animals need to be able to move freely throughout the province, throughout the island, and our communities. So one of the things that I think we often get kind of caught up in is this idea that, a city is not a habitat. A habitat is forests or beaches or whatever. But we're part of the habitat, and so the cougars is a really interesting sort of conversation here on the South Island, because it's like we're thinking about coexistence. How can we coexist with these animals? And I think that habitat protection, yes, we definitely need to put aside big areas of habitat protection for a number of these species, and we are doing that. But we also need to recognize that animals move. They need to be able to have corridors. We can, connect our habitats through our towns and cities. We can create habitat in our yards, for maybe not just for cougars, but for birds, for Steller jays, for example, for all different species. We can create a habitat that is larger than just these little patches of protected areas. And that's what animals actually need to thrive, because a lot of them are covering vast distances.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Asking our audience as well, let us know your thoughts on that and what a conversation like this has you thinking about. What is BC's most iconic creature is the question today. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Ralph is joining us now from Powell River. Hi there, Ralph. Thanks for being on the show. What do you think should be BC's most iconic animal?
I just learned that it was last week's animal choice, but I still think it should be the bald eagle.
Oh.
I think it's a very majestic animal, and the way it survives and gets its food and everything, it's beautiful to see, and I think that should be the animal that is iconic to BC.
Gosh, what is it about their habits and their ingenuity that really stands out for you, Ralph?
It's the way they get their food. They're catching fish, salmon that are moving a lot in the water, and yet from way above they can see everything and the way they move, and they can actually just chime it right in and catch the fish. Obviously, they miss it every once in a while, but if you look closely, like I've seen it done a few times, I see them swooping in, and they don't really miss all that much, and I think it's very majestic.
That's such a great description. Thank you very much for that. That's Ralph at Powell River. Connel, tell us about that. The accuracy, I guess, of their predator habits. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the thing about bald eagles that I think is so interesting is that I have seen them eating all kinds of things. They are just such good predators. You think, yeah, they love the salmon and the fish and whatnot, but I've seen them eating giant Pacific octopus. I've seen them eating, all kinds of just so many different things. So they're such a such a good predator, and they could be a good symbol. We do have a lot of them. I'm sure we've all seen them around and about.
Just head over to Brackendale, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, you think about driving around the Lower Mainland, particularly sort of in the winter, and there's just the trees are full of eagles.
Yeah.
So, it's not a bad shout, but there are a lot of them. But I was thinking, this is interesting when you said about, talking about catching the bald eagle and what it could eat and whatnot. And I thought, actually, maybe I need to change my answer, because there is an animal that connects basically all of them on the list, and that is salmon. So and habitat too. They connect the ocean, the land, different parts of BC. Maybe I've changed my mind.
Yes. No, I can hear you doing so. It is the sockeye salmon is doing very well. And I have to say, overwhelmingly, I'm not trying to influence the vote here, but overwhelmingly, our callers last week did bring up the salmon. And we do have an email here from Tracy, who writes, salmon are absolutely incredible and essential to life for humans, animals, trees, and plants. They are determined, strong, and intuitive. They know how to return to their birthplace after years at sea. They are a symbol of home. Go salmon, sockeye, or Chinook. So there you go. And she also says fish farms out. So that's Tracy's point there when it comes to conservation as well. Thank you very much for that email. But salmon seems to be kind of a uniting force.
Yeah. No salmon, no forest.
Yeah.
That's no salmon, no forest. No, we don't have the level of biodiversity. There are very few species in this province, at least in the coastal part of this province, that is not reliant on salmon. Even species that are not eating them directly, like you said, they create biodiverse forests with more plants, which is good for birds, good for insects, and good for us, and on and on and on. So, I said orca. Maybe I'm walking myself back.
I think you are. Yeah, it just took for the course of a few minutes. You had to talk it through.
But this is the fun of it. Maybe this time next round of the voting, I might change my mind. Who knows?
Yeah, don't get you started on the trees, right?
The fact that someone said the red cedar was overrated, I'm still stewing over that. Thank goodness that you didn't come to me then, because I was going to come in hot about that one. That was unbelievable.
Oh yeah, I thought, that's a hot take if there ever was one.
That's fighting words. Gotta be careful.
Colwood writes, and this is an interesting question for you, Connell. Just wondering what happened to the coastal wolves or sea wolves, which are genetically distinct from mainland wolves. Remember Takaya? Oh yeah, just off the coast from Oak Bay. And thank you very much for that question. What do you think?
Well, they could definitely be on the, they're not on the list. They could definitely be a symbol of the coast. They are a genetically diverse, unique population. They live their lives very differently to the inland wolves, and they are just such beautiful, beautiful creatures that utilize the coast in the most amazing ways. They are designed for the coast, and I have been lucky enough to see them here on Vancouver Island, and it's one of the most special things I've ever seen. That there is nothing like being around wolves in a safe way, obviously. But so they could be on the list. Maybe I don't know. There needs to be more. We could keep going and going and going. That's what I was saying. This is the joy of it. There's so many animals in BC to choose from.
There are so many. I think it sounded like you were landing on the salmon. Robert seems to be as well. I think that all the species of Pacific salmon should be BC's symbol. They are not just a creature of both salt and fresh water, but they feed humans and animals, and they also land nomads because of their discarded carcasses that fertilize our forests. Yeah, Robert. Yeah, that seems to sum up quite a few of what we've been hearing here on the show. Connell, sounds like we're going to be checking in with you again. Thank you very much for that. And I hear you. I think you're voting for the salmon today.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to going to go for the sockeye as well. Because let's be honest, I like pretty things. We like it. They look the nicest. That, maybe it's a little shallow, but I think I'm going to go for it and vote now.
No, you gave us a substance earlier. You can say it's pretty. Yeah. Connell, pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Connel Bradwell is a wildlife educator and conservationist. It is now 12:48. You're with BC Today. On Friday, we asked you about your experience with e-scooters. And the Canadian Institute of Health Information is reporting a rise in injuries related to e-scooters. Here are some of your emails. Ron writes from Vernon, my 19-year-old son was riding an e-scooter on Canada Day and was involved in a crash that left him out of work with a broken leg. There's an irony that he was on the scooter because there's no viable transit option for his 7-kilometer commute. My concern, and I don't know a solution, is why are these things capable of going so much faster than the legislated 25K max? He was going 65 downhill when this happened. And Ron writes, I am all for e-scooter safety. I'd like to zoom out a bit, though. In 2023, more than 118,000 people were injured or killed by motor vehicle crashes in Canada. 20% of the fatalities and serious injuries were pedestrians or cyclists. That comes from StatsCan. So while 1,000 injuries from e-scooters sounds concerning, my question is how many injuries were prevented by people getting around by scooter instead of car? I hear concerns of people having scooters come close to them on sidewalks. I can relate. I get very scared when cars come close to me when I'm crossing in the crosswalk. I've been hit by one car that ran a red light and another that turned left into me. I think it's a little crazy that we speed limit scooters to 25 kilometers and then tell them to drive on the road with 5,000-pound vehicles that regularly ignore stop signs and often exceed the posted speed. Well, thanks so much to both of you for emailing us. And to recap the rules on e-scooters, you must be 16 years old, wear a safety helmet, you can't ride on sidewalks or in crosswalks, and you can't carry passengers. $12:50 now, and a warning for you right now. Our next segment will cover intimate partner and gender-based violence. If you or a loved one is affected by family or intimate partner violence, help is available through crisis lines and local support lines. Victim Link BC can be reached at 1-800-563-0808, and a list of shelters and resources is available at the Canadian government's website. Now, a man has been charged with second-degree murder in the death of a 51-year-old woman in Richmond on Friday. RCMP say the woman was the victim of alleged domestic violence. Earlier this month, 32-year-old Bailey McCourt was killed in an attack in a parking lot in Kelowna. A man there has been charged with second-degree murder. While IHIT has called the Richmond case an isolated incident with no ongoing risk to the public, advocates say intimate partner and gender-based violence is a public emergency. Angela Marie McDougall is Executive Director of the Battered Women's Support Services in Vancouver.
Well, how victims of intimate partner violence can be seen as being most at risk is in part because of the way that the system frames this kind of violence. They frame it as private, random, and not something that's preventable. But we know that this is not the case, that it is public, it's not random, and it's absolutely preventable. And so this is what we wanted to disrupt. And that's why it concerns us whenever we hear police say that there's no risk to the public, because there absolutely is a risk to the public right now. And this is why we need to take action.
That's Angela Marie McDougall. Joining us now is BC's Acting Attorney General, Mike Farnworth. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for being with us, Minister.
My pleasure. Good afternoon.
When you hear that intimate partner violence should be deemed a public health emergency, we know that a few months ago it was declared an epidemic. Gender-based violence was declared an epidemic. Do you view it as a public health emergency?
I view it as a very serious issue that we need to be doing everything we can to address it.
Is it a public health emergency?
It's to the individual is involved. It's an emergency, and the statistics that we have seen, not just here in British Columbia, but indeed across Canada and in fact in many other places around the world, particularly since the pandemic, where we've seen a rise, it's extremely concerning. And so in that response, in that sense, yes, it is something that we need to be doing more to combat and deal with at the various levels of government that have got the different responsibilities to be able to deal with this issue, whether it's at the federal government with the criminal code, or whether it's at the provincial level, ensuring that we've got transition houses in place, that we are ensuring that police are trained in terms of how to deal with domestic violence, the seriousness with which we take it. Because I agree, it is something that is preventable, it is public, and we need to be ensuring that we're all working to deal with it.
What would it take for it to be declared a public health emergency, not just to that individual who's affected or their family, but in the way that we have dealt or have seen the opioid crisis here in BC?
Well, I think the way we deal with it is, you can say, yes, it's a public health emergency, but if that's all you do, that doesn't really accomplish much. What you have to have in place is look at what are the root causes that are causing domestic violence, intimate partner violence to take place. What are the challenges that we're dealing with in terms of the tools and the laws we have in place? So, for example, the case that we had a couple of weeks ago that you just talked about in terms of the parking lot, that was someone who was convicted and was due to be sentenced, and they were released on bail.
Right.
After they had already been convicted. We need to change the bail reform laws. That's something that our Attorney General has been championing in Ottawa at the federal provincial level. And we're expecting those changes to be introduced by the federal government in the fall sitting of Parliament. So you're putting in place a reverse onus that someone who has been convicted does not automatically get released. At the same time, the Attorney General has also been pushing for changes when things such as strangulation have been involved in assault cases, again, to make it more difficult to get bail.
But yes,
those are changes at the criminal code level. At the provincial level, there are changes that we need to be doing, or continuing to invest in transition houses for women and children who are fleeing domestic violence.
Right.
And ensuring that police have proper training, trauma-informed training in terms of how to deal with these kinds of situations.
But do you get concerned when you hear police say this is an isolated incident? And the point we hear is that it's not. It should be seen as a threat to the public. And are you concerned that there is a lack of understanding as to how prevalent this intimate partner violence actually is when it comes to how police deal with it?
I think police very much understand the level of what takes place because they deal with it on an ongoing basis. I think where we need to be careful is when police are saying it's an isolated incident, it is restricted to that family. It's not an individual who is out, like a serial individual, that kind of thing. That being said, it is serious. Police do take it very seriously. It's why we've put in place training and programs to ensure that they take it seriously. It's why we've put in place additional funding for women's centers. It's why we've ensured that there's funding in place for sexual assault centers so that women can come forward, that their experience can be dealt with in a trauma-informed way. And that may not initially involve police, but people working in those centers and police being involved.
I just have 1 minute left, Minister, but you started off we started by mentioning that it's been deemed an epidemic, and you said it could just be words. But why not? Why will the province take the step to declare this a public health emergency?
The province is taking all the steps that we should be taking in terms of ensuring that the criminal code is changed, that ensuring
what about the declaration?
A declaration is a declaration. It does not change the criminal code. That's what needs to happen. Ensuring that resources are there for sexual assault centers, that they're not cut as they were in previous years. Ensuring that police have trauma-informed training. Those are the measures that need to take place, along with public education campaigns that start right at the very early age, that intimate partner and domestic violence is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form.
Mike Farnworth, I appreciate your time. We'll continue this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's BC's Acting Attorney General, Mike Farnworth.